Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and this time we have both good and bad news to discuss surrounding Nintendo and the Switch 2. Generally, I like to focus on the positives, and there are indeed some positives to discuss today, such as a new Nintendo presentation now confirmed for this week, also proving at least part of an exciting bigger direct rumor, and we even have some news suggesting the game keycard situation is going to be improving. There is, however, also some things going on that quite frankly, and understandably, will leave many not so pleased, like prices going up and probably a fake Mario 40th anniversary rumor that has spread like wildfire. And so as usual for my more general news videos, there will be timestamps, but we have a variety of subjects to get into this time. So a few days ago, Nintendo officially announced a Switch pricing update. As they say here, pricing for the original Nintendo Switch family of systems and products will change in the United States based on market conditions effective August 3rd, 2025. These include Nintendo Switch OLED model, Nintendo Switch Lite, and select Nintendo Switch accessories. And so when we go to Nintendo's page, you'll see here the OLED is now priced at nearly $400, the Switch Basic is $340, and the Switch Lite is $230. Originally, the OLED was $350, the base Switch was $300, and the Switch Lite was $200. And so Switch Lite has gone up $30, base Switch has gone up $40, and Switch OLED has gone up $50. These are significant price increases, and it's kind of crazy to think about that we're now this late into the Switch generation. The Switch 2 has come out, so after the Switch 2 has come out, instead of seeing our first official widespread price drop for the Switch 1 family of systems, we're actually getting price increases. Now this is happening because of market conditions. And this news is not exciting to me in any way, shape, or form. It's just very strange and unfortunate. But I do want to address this false narrative that's going on right now. This that's happening does have to do with market conditions. At the end of the day, Nintendo, like many other companies, is a business. And so they have to operate in a way where they can stay in the green, right? And other companies have been raising their prices. So it's unfortunate, but it is also expected. Some people would have you believe that Nintendo quietly did this, that they're trying to avoid the negativity or anything like that. Well, that's not really the case at all. Well, one, this is an official announcement, like this is on their own page, Nintendo Switch pricing update. But also, we go back to April, they talked about how this would happen. Here it reads, however, Nintendo Switch 2 accessories will experience price adjustments from those announced on April 2nd due to changes in market conditions. Other adjustments to the price of any Nintendo product are also possible in the future depending on market conditions. This all has to do with market conditions, a lot of which has to do with tariffs. And so Nintendo had already announced price increases for a lot of their accessories for Switch 2, and they let us know the prices for other things could be going up in the future, and so on August 1st, they officially announced a pricing update for the Switch 1 family of systems. And something else to note here, the price for Switch 2 could also go up. They haven't announced a price update for Switch 2 or their games, just the accessories, but that may go up. So while I don't want to see it, I'm sure many of you others don't want to see it either, this might be the cheapest time to pick up a Switch 2, and in the future, well, it's probably going to be more expensive. And looking at how things worked out for Switch 1, it never dropped in price. Now maybe someday down the road, years from now, Switch 2 will drop in price, perhaps when market conditions make such a thing more feasible. But as I said, this is probably the best time to pick up a Switch 2 if you're looking to pick one up, at least at the most affordable price possible, which, yes, admittedly, is higher than any other prior Nintendo console. But when you're selling a Switch OLED, a console that came out in 2021, here in 2025 alongside your new console, that sells at $450, it's just an odd situation. Like, who's going to want to buy a Switch OLED for $400 when you can buy the new Switch 2 for $450? I imagine this is temporary. The Switch 2 price will eventually go up, unless they phase out the Switch OLED fairly soon, but they still want to sell a Switch 1 as well, so I'm not sure what's going on, but definitely this is not exciting stuff. In more positive news, however, Nintendo of America did just announce today that an Indie World is going to be happening on August 7th at 6 AM Pacific Time and 9 AM Eastern Time. This is going to have to do with roughly 15 minutes of new announcements and updates on indie games coming to Nintendo Switch 2 and Nintendo Switch. Now, this is an indie presentation, and so many people may not find that to be so exciting, but there could be some pretty exciting indie games, and this is going to be the first indie presentation that's going to tie into Nintendo Switch 2, and so there could be some pretty fun, exciting things there. Now, some people are probably hoping to see maybe Silk Song, and Silk Song, well, that's been a song we've been singing for a long time if we'll actually see this game finally announced and actually coming out. But it is technically an indie game. It could technically show up in this presentation, although given how big it is and how many people are anticipating it, I would assume it would be saved for a bigger presentation. But as I've been saying, we've been talking about Silk Song showing up at some kind of presentation for years at this point. When it happens, and it's possible it could show up here. Regardless though, I do think there are going to be some announcements here that will appease to a great many people. Of course, given that they are indie titles, they will be of the smaller in scope variety. But what makes this announcement increasingly more interesting though, is that we have a friend of the channel, Zach from Switchforce, who said something very interesting, who actually said there would be a presentation this week that wouldn't be a big general direct, wouldn't be a partner. He essentially told us it would be an indie showcase without telling us it would be an indie showcase. And so this is what he said.
I'm telling you that the partner showcase that just took place was phase 1 of a 3-phase Nintendo Direct program, okay?
And so Switchforce was telling us that a presentation was going to be happening this week, early in the morning, just like the partner showcase last week, and that's exactly what has happened. But what he's also told us is that this is part 2 of a 3-phase plan. Part 1 was the partner showcase, part 2 is his indie world, and part 3 would be a bigger general that would have things like Metroid Prime 4 or something having to do with Mario's 40th anniversary or some other type of announcement as a holiday release this year. Now keep in mind, this is a rumor, right? This is something that Switchforce has heard. It is a rumor, take it with a grain of salt. That said, he was 100% spot on about this Indie World Showcase, and he was saying that there's going to be more. And this isn't something where he's pulling from someone else. He's not reporting on another bit of information. He is reporting on something he has heard. So yes, I would say there is reason to take Switchforce seriously here and think that he has heard something and he's saying there's going to be more. But also, obviously, common sense wise, you gotta think Nintendo's going to make announcements for their first party offerings relatively soon. Switchforce has suggested that we should look at Nintendo's release slate and consider that as a hint for when we'll next get the big presentation. And we have dates for games in August, and after that, we don't. So announcements need to happen relatively soon for games to come out in September, right? When might that happen? I would assume at the very latest, September, because if you wait past September, then you can't make announcements for games coming out in September, can you? So it's an interesting rumor that I'm definitely keeping my eyes on. We'll see what happens. Something I'm not going to be keeping my eyes on, though, is this latest Mario 40th anniversary rumor that's really spread a great deal this morning to so many different outlets. And it's this apparent collection of new Super Mario Bros. The new Super Mario Bros. Line, and well, personally, this line was never that exciting to me, this series, but this is what the rumor has suggested. But this is the rumor. It would be coming out for Mario's 40th anniversary. As written here by My Nintendo News, John Skinny of NeoGAF and Discord Notoriety has said that Nintendo will be releasing a new Super Mario Bros. Collection in celebration of the franchise's 40th anniversary. The collection will apparently contain New Super Mario Bros. DS, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, and New Super Mario Bros. 2 3DS. The user reportedly received information via internal scheduling documents and partial localization assets via a contractor quality assurance team that he has worked with before. John Skinny previously correctly leaked some details of the Nintendo Switch 2 before release. Now, this may or may not be the case, however, we have seen that the initial Reddit post that posted this has taken it down. Usually that's because they decide that this is not even worth talking about, that it's probably fake. And as you go through this thread, they talk about how there's been a lot of things this John Skinny person has talked about that have been totally bogus. Like a Kirby Planet Robot relaunched, for example. Or how they got to play a secret private demo with a Switch 2 like 10 months ago. And we've even seen that the barcode for this game is apparently the same one for New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. In other words, they just kind of copied it over. And a lot of people who speak Japanese have been saying that the text here doesn't even really make any sense. So yeah, this is probably fake. And also, let me just say that this box art looks really simple. I don't think this is what Nintendo would actually do. So it's probably fake. That said, I do think Nintendo does have plans for Mario's 40th anniversary. We've previously talked about how there is a rumor coming from Special Nick of the Xbox Era podcast that Nintendo is remastering Super Mario Galaxy 2. If that is indeed the case, I would imagine it's announced before September is done. Perhaps sooner, we shall see. Something else that's been going on as of late is a lot of negativity and controversy following the partner showcase that happened last week. And part of that's because not everyone agrees that the partner showcase was a good one. I actually think, once you think about the games that are there and where they're coming from, it's pretty good when compared to other partner showcases, but not everyone agrees, and many people are more so upset by the fact that this presentation comprised of a lot of third-party games coming to Switch 2, they are going to be game keycard physical releases. So if you don't know what a game keycard is, it's essentially a cartridge, so it's a physical thing you can buy that you can sell, resell, borrow, all that stuff, which is good, like a physical game, but you actually have to download the game onto your console. It's just a key to download it once it's inside your console, and it has to be inside your console to actually play it. In a certain sense, it's somewhat similar to installing a disc like it works for PlayStation and Xbox consoles, but the difference here is that even with installs, technically the game is still on the disc. The games for the game keycards are not actually on the cartridge. And so oftentimes these games take up a lot of space on your system's storage, so you're probably going to have to upgrade your storage. And there's a fear that years later down the road, you will not be able to download this game onto your console because those servers may no longer be up. And so once Nintendo put out this survey where they were asking how people feel about their physical media, they kind of caught also like wildfire throughout social media, and very quickly the survey was taken down. People took this as an opportunity to let people know that many people are not a fan of game keycards. Now, something I'll say to this though is that I do feel like game keycards are an improvement over what was happening on Switch 1, where it wasn't even a cartridge, it was just a download code. And so you couldn't resell it or borrow it or put it into another console. And you didn't actually have a physical cartridge, which, you know, if you want to have something to collect, to actually look at, there is some value lost there with just a download code. So objectively speaking, I do think a game keycard is better than that. And the game keycards do appear to be a solution for developers who have to make some tough choices here, because the options, from what we have heard, is either a game keycard or a 64GB cartridge. And so you have some cases where a game is too big to fit onto a 64GB cartridge, and then in other cases, the cost of that 64GB cartridge isn't worth it for the smaller games, so they go for a game keycard instead. Well, friend of the channel, Super Metal Day 64, found out that Macronix has reported in their quarterly earnings that they will start using MLC NAND and 3D NAND to meet varying capacity requirements. And he points out the source right here, and as Dave talks about here, this could mean there could be more varying storage sizes for Switch 2 cartridges beyond just the game keycard and 64GB cartridges. So this could then mean in the future there will be more options and developers can pick cheaper or higher storage options. That way there can be less game keycards out there. Now, some people have wondered, why can't they just put the game on a Switch 1 cartridge? Well, the thing is that the Switch 2 operates more quickly. The Switch 2 cartridges are faster, and so you have to maintain that standard if it's going to be a Switch 2 title. Of course, if you buy a Switch 1 game and there's a Switch 2 edition, you can still download that update onto your console while still having that Switch 1 cartridge. But not everyone's going to want to have a Switch 1 cartridge. Some people are going to just want to have that cool red Switch 2 cartridge, but with the game actually on there. So with this latest news, hopefully in the future, we are going to see more sizes for Switch 2 cartridges, which will make it easier for developers to choose options that avoid game keycards. And hopefully this recent survey that Nintendo had to take down very quickly helps to fuel this movement to push away from just game keycards. But what do you make of this latest news? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.